This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Jessica. And on this week's episode, Ashley is going to be finishing her two-part series on the disappearance of Maura Murray. And hopefully she has some fun updates for us.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay. Hopefully soon. And I am going to be talking about a cult. It's called Shinrikyo, I think. I don't know. It's going to be a fun time with me trying to pronounce words. So
They're a Japanese cult, you said?
I think so. Yeah. Oh, they're based in Tokyo. I don't know. No, Japanese. Yep. They're a Japanese group.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Tokyo, Japan. Good luck.
Woohoo.
All right, yeah. So I have part 2 where I'm going to go through some of the theories about what people think happened to Maura. So just a quick recap. Maura was a University of Massachusetts student. And one day she emailed her professors, told them that she had a death in the family, dropped some clothes off that she had borrowed at a friend's, stopped at an ATM and withdrew all of what she had in her bank account, which was $280, stopped at a liquor store, crashed her car, and was never seen from again. So there's quite a few theories on this. And one theory that I just kind of wanted to tackle right away was that, remember last week when we talked about that author, James Renner?
Yeah.
Who did that whole biography on her?
Yeah.
Well, his theory was that she had run away to Canada. So one of the things this documentary did was talk about like people who run away and disappear generally have a lot more money than $280, right? Because you have to be able to sustain yourself for a while. And so that's kind of one issue with that theory. The other issue is that the journalist in this documentary, her name's Maggie, she had someone do an age progression photo on Maura. So what she would have looked like about the time that those witnesses in Canada came forward and said that they saw her, like by her age, what she should have looked like.
Yeah.
And they got those, the store clerk who said they saw her to come on for an interview, and they showed her this picture along with like 3 other women about the same age and said, like, are any of these ladies the ones you said? And she said, actually, no, none of these look like who I saw. Had I, seen these pictures of like what she should have looked like at that age, then I would have said no. She said that when James had asked her about it, he showed her an old one from when she was like 21. So, that she said, yeah, thought she saw that girl, but how she would have actually looked at that age, she said, no, I don't think that was her.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so she did say that she did remember the encounter with this girl because it was winter and she rode up on a bike and she was kind of like looking around the inside of the store from the outside, almost like she was looking for cameras. And then when she finally came in the store, she asked if she could see some live music, but was specific that she wanted small venues with not many people around. She didn't end up buying anything and she left. So that's kind of why the woman remembered it so vividly. But again, when she saw that picture of what Maura would look like at this age, she's like, I don't really think so. And a lot of people don't think this is the case. Again, she only had $280 to her name. Her car disappeared in she disappeared in New Hampshire, which, you would think she would drive a little bit further. And plus, getting over the border, you have to have some kind of ID. And I feel like they would have had record of that,
Well, for sure. And I mean, like you said, it's just weird that she left her car in New Hampshire because she was from Boston, right?
Yeah.
And that's not very far from each other. So,
right. Yeah. So and when I say we, I mean me and the documentary person, Maggie, because her and I are best friends now since I watched this whole documentary. Jessica, she looks so cool. Like, I want to be her friend.
Gee, thanks.
She looks really cool. Huh?
I said, gee, thanks.
You look cool too, Jess.
In my flannel.
Oh gosh, yeah, she just looks like one of those cool girls. Like she's just like really petite and has this like beautiful, just like flowing brunette hair. She's like tatted up. Just she looks so cool. Anyway, so
That's funny. Wait, is there a national park nearby New Hampshire?
yeah, there's several.
Oh, so maybe she disappeared in the national park or became one of those creepy park people.
We're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
So one more random piece of information, and I wasn't really sure where to put this in my story, but if anybody who is listening follows the Maura case, they've heard about this rag that was found in her exhaust pipe. Some people speculate that she perhaps had stopped at like a gas station. Someone saw her, shoved a rag in there so that her car would like not work, and she would have to pull over on the side of the road there where they could like get her and go. So I did want to address that because they did talk about it in the documentary, and the Maggie actually went to a mechanic who specialized in Saturns, which I didn't even know there was like people specialized in Saturns. But
There are mechanics that specialize in many different types of vehicles.
I just figured like if you were to specialize in something, you would specialize in something like cooler than a Saturn. But I mean, to each their own.
Wow, that's rude and judgy, Ashley.
Not that there's anything wrong with a Saturn.
There are people that specialize in Fords in their junk vehicles, so
Uh, I really have no stake in the game. I drive a Mazda.
I do
Anyway,
too.
so
What do you have?
So he actually I have a Mazda CX-5. What do
Me
you have?
too.
Do you really?
Yeah.
What color is yours?
It's Micra blue.
Is that the dark blue?
Yeah.
That's mine.
Really?
Yes. We drive the same exact car. Oh,
Oh,
that's crazy.
that is so funny. When did you get yours?
In 2019.
Oh man.
What's yours?
2017.
Oh, I'm cooler than you. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's funny.
Oh. So anyway, the mechanic that specialized in Saturns
What a
took
loser.
a rag and put it in the exhaust pipe, kind of similar to how they found it, because they said it was hanging out about 8 to 10 inches out of her exhaust pipe. And then he ran the car like you were driving it, and the car didn't like break down. It just like poofed the rag out, just like poofed.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, why was the rag in there in the first place? Well, apparently her dad had told her not to drive her car because it was like falling apart. There was like smoke coming out of it. It was not driving well. So he said, do not drive your car. But if you put a rag into the tailpipe, you might be able to get past police. So I think that's what she was doing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so just trying to do a little trick so that like, because either it was smoking or it was too loud or whatever, and the rag was supposed to kind of help just be able to get her past the police to get to where she's going without getting pulled over, I guess.
Solid advice, Dad.
Yeah. So they interview him a lot in the documentary. His name's Fred, and he seems like such a sweet man. I loved him.
Oh, with the name Fred.
But, huh?
He has the name Fred. That just
I know,
always
it's
seems like it's a
name.
nice guy.
Yeah. And he's got like a really thick Boston accent, which I love.
Yeah, you were saying that.
It's just so cute. I just think it's adorable. All right, so let's get into one of the more well-known theories. And this is that it was a police cover-up. So something happened and the police are covering it up. And that's why nobody's ever been able to find her.
What?
Yeah. So apparently the police have never really done interviews or like shared any information. And one local former law enforcement police officer decided to help the family and look into the case. So it kind of became like a PI. And he was told back when he like started looking into this by law enforcement to back off or he would be charged with interfering in an investigation.
That's suspicious.
There's also a person who they call Witness A who claims to have driven by, and this Witness A, who we later find out her name's Karen, so I can say she for years was anonymous and just like kind of told her story on like to the news or to like blogs, but I don't know that she was ever necessarily interviewed by the police because she was Witness A. Like, oh, you know what? I take that back. They did know who she was because they call her to check up on her story, but I don't. Anyway, let me just tell you what she found. So
Okay.
she claims to have driven by the scene and saw a police SUV nose to nose with Maura's car with 001 on the back, like the number 001. And locals say that at this time, the police department only had one SUV, and it was 001, and it was generally driven by Chief of Police Jeff Williams. But his police car was never reported on the scene. There was only ever two police officers that were reported on the scene. One was Cecil Smith, who was like the regular part of the county police department, and then there was a state trooper. But the chief of police, Jeff Williams, was never reported on scene.
Very suspicious.
Yeah, and apparently, according to townsfolk, it was well known that he has driven the police car drunk at times.
No, of course.
So the theory is that maybe he caused Maura's accident and then like they got in an altercation, something happened, and he killed her. And this is what the police are covering up.
Imagine.
So, looking a little bit more into Witness A, who, as I said, was Karen, she also says the official timeline can't be right. So, remember the official timeline from last week was that Maura likely crashed at about 7:25 p.m. A woman named Faith, who lived right across the street from her, from the crash, called the police at 7:27. At 7:30, a bus driver named Butch pulls up. He calls the police again at 7:40. The lines, all circuits were busy. They called him back at 7:43. And by 7:46, Maura was gone.
Yeah.
So Karen says that this timeline can't be correct because so she said it's dark when she leaves her office, and she always calls her husband on her way home because it's a long, dark, windy road in the winter. So she wants someone to know that, you know, in case anything happened, like she's on her way. And she said that her drive was generally 40 minutes and that where she saw Maura, it was about a quarter of a way into the trip. She said that she drove past, she saw the two vehicles, but no people. She then kind of pulled over to the left and turned to look, but she kind of figured, well, you know, I'm not going to stop and do anything. The police are here. I don't have cell reception anyway, so what would I do? So then she left. And she didn't get service again until Beaver Pond, which is about 14 minutes away. And when she got to Beaver Pond, she made the phone call saying she was coming into town. She called at 7:52, which would put her crash at the crash site at 7:37 p.m., 9 minutes before the supposed first police officer arrived at 7:46. So she said that she did end up calling the police and telling them, like, you know, hey, this is what I saw. And they were surprised it was car 001. They even called her back a few days later and said, like, hey, like, are you sure it was car 001? And she was like, yeah. And then they never contacted her again. Like, nothing more came of that.
Of course not.
Yeah. So now, when you talk to Maura's dad, he thinks the police are hiding things as well, but he thinks it's for a different reason. He doesn't think that, Chief Jeff Williams, somehow had something to do with it. He thinks that they messed up the investigation and they're trying to cover it up. So apparently, the place where Maura went missing is like right on jurisdiction lines. So, like, half of the road is the local police, half of the road is the state troopers.
I was just about to say. This was like what happened in Super Troopers.
Really?
Yeah,
I haven't seen that movie in so long. I don't remember.
there's that like RV trailer and there was a deceased stripper in it and it was like on the line. So like the troopers showed up there saying it was their scene and the local police showed up saying it was their scene and they had like a
Oh,
big brawl over it and then yeah.
oh, that's kind of what happened, except there wasn't a big brawl. But
That's good.
um, yeah, so they had these two different jurisdictions. So apparently, the local police could only search on the one side, and then so he did, and then John Moynihan was the trooper, and he came up and said that he came and he like searched the area on his side. And the New Hampshire State Police said that they didn't even know that Trooper Monahan was on site. And he has never gone on record, and neither has the State Department.
What?
So, yeah. So they were finally able to get permission to interview these officers. They interviewed all three of the ones we've talked about. And this is what Moynihan said. He was the state trooper that pulled up. He said he rolled up on the scene and saw Cecil, who was the police officer that responded to the scene first. He said, "Do you need any help? And I can search around." And Cecil was like, "Yeah, I've got Butch, who was that bus driver, searching up in the mountains, in the mountain lake area." So Moynihan said he would check some of the back roads. So he like drove down some of the back roads, but he didn't see anything. He said he searched for about an hour. He didn't see anyone or any footprints. So he just left. He was like, it was just seemed like a regular car crash, abandoned car, and, nothing more to it. So he didn't even write up a report about it, and said a day or two after his superiors called and they said, "Hey, did you help with that car crash?" And he's like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Did you write a report?" And he said, like, "No, because I just looked a little bit and then left." And they're like, "Okay, well, let's write up a report for this." And 2 days
Yeah.
after, when they had called him to ask him that, would have been the time that witness A had called in and said that. So that's how they found out. So I think that makes sense to me. I think some people would say maybe not, but to me, that makes sense. Police officer rolling up on the scene, seeing another police officer already there and like looking around for a little bit. And I mean, like, okay, that's that. Because I'm sure that anytime you don't have to write a report, you don't, because writing a
Yeah.
report sucks. But
Yes. Yep.
so let's talk about Cecil. So Cecil Smith, again, was the first one on the scene. He was dispatched to the crash and saw the car facing him in his lane as he drove up on the scene. And he said something red had been splashed on the driver's side door and on the driver's side rooftop. He said it looked like wine that was sitting in the back of the seat. There was a box of wine in the back of the seat, and it looked like if she had gotten in an accident and it spilled. He said both airbags were deployed and there was a crack on the windshield. So he asked Butch if she seemed hurt. But he said no, she did seem kind of drunk though, because she was kind of leaning on something, slurring, and asked him not to call the police. However, if she did get hit in the head, like with the airbag or the windshield or whatever, that could be also a sign of a concussion, right?
Yeah.
The police officer said that he also didn't know Butch before the accident. So our journalist thought that it was a little weird that the police officer had him go search, just because he was one of the last known people to see this girl. But I guess like at the time, he's just a dude that lives there that's willing to help,
Yeah, for sure.
And I know throughout the years, things have like kind of pointed towards Butch being a little suspicious. I know his story had changed and stuff, but the police never found reason to really move forward with that, and Butch has since passed away. So
Interesting.
yeah, Cecil said that there was no other officer at the scene. It was just him. And he did say that it was winter. So he was driving a 4x4 Explorer, the SUV with 001 on it. So that wasn't the police chief. That was just Cecil. He said he searched the area but didn't see any indication that anyone had walked through the snow. He also said that when he interviewed the family, Fred said, that Maura had just gotten in that accident last week. She was all depressed, and maybe she just did a squaw, which I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, what is?
Yeah, and this is sad that this is so commonly done that it has a word for it, but apparently it means like you're like depressed, and so you just go into the woods, step off the trail, and die. And it's called squaw.
What? You
Yeah,
step off what?
the trail, and then just like die.
How?
Like you just like because it's cold winter, so you just walk off the trail, walk into the woods, and just die,
Oh, okay.
like on purpose.
Yeah.
So, and Kathleen told Cecil the same thing, that she had gotten in an accident before. Fred got mad, Maura took off, and that she may have taken some pills, walked into the woods, and died.
That's sad.
Yeah, and it's weird though that at first both Maura's dad and sister were thinking that her mental health was so poor that she could have committed suicide, but has since then, said, oh, no, that's not the case. So that does bring us to the theory of suicide, which we will talk to in a second. But they did also interview Police Chief Jeff Williams. He said he was not on duty at that night. That in fact, the police department never provided the chief of police with a cruiser. And he confirmed that Smith was driving the vehicle.
Okay.
So I think that really explains a lot of the police theory. I mean, I think there's still some things unexplained in that theory, but for me, it doesn't seem to be a viable one. What do you think?
I don't know. I think that the suspicious parts of it were kind of explained,
Yeah.
and whether that's part of the cover up or not, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a little odd that a lot of them didn't do any interviews in regards to the case.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I still really like my DID theory,
Mm-hmm.
or abducted by aliens theory.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they interviewed the district attorney, and he basically said that like they haven't done many interviews because it's an ongoing investigation, and there's things that they don't want anybody to know, just like in any criminal case, so
Yeah.
that only them and the if it is a murder did it. But he was also present in all of the interviews of these other officers, which seems a little fishy to me. But
Yeah.
aside from that, yeah. So let's talk about the theory that Maura committed suicide slash was like so intoxicated that she just went into the woods and died. So either way, like she of her own volition went into the woods and died.
Okay.
And again, we bring up the fact that both her father and sister thought that at first perhaps it was a suicide. In her car, they found 4 packs of sleeping pills, and one of the packs was empty. But I know, like, if you take your pills and it's empty, then it's just an empty bottle. They don't say like when they were prescribed. Like if they were prescribed like the day before and they're empty already, that's different. But so people wonder, was she trying to overdose on sleeping pills? Plus, if she was drinking with them, was that kind of added into it?
Mm-hmm.
Was the car crash she had the weekend before that cost her dad $9,000 to be fixed kind of like the catalyst for her suicide attempt?
Yeah.
I think that's a bit much. I don't know. I mean, I think you'd already have to be really, really contemplating suicide for just like a car crash to be like the catalyst for you to attempt suicide.
Yeah.
But I mean, we don't know her mental state, right?
For sure. And I mean, like, she could have had other things going on and Could have been
Right.
anxiety. There might have been like a little PTSD from the accident. Who knows, right?
Yeah. And even her dad said, like, she like really messed up the car. I mean, it was $9,000 in damages. So he said he was mad. But he said, like, she came to her or she came to her dad, and she was absolutely bawling, like couldn't get a word out. She felt so bad. And, he didn't yell at her, but he also said that he didn't have to yell for her to know he was upset. One of those like disappointed dad tones, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And he also said that, like, telling police that she went on a squaw walk was just a way of, like, he said, representing himself, but he in no ways believes that that's what she did. He said that he thinks that even if she did commit suicide, she would have been found. He said there would, there was snow on the ground, so there would have been footprints or something. And we're going to talk about that right now. So, I thought I had it a little bit later in the story, but then I kept reading and I don't have it right here.
That's really funny.
So Todd, I think it's Bogardus. He works for the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, and he has conducted hundreds of searches for people within those woods. And so far, there are only two still missing, Maura being one of them. So out of all the hundreds of searches he's done, there's only two that they haven't been able to find. And so for Maura's search, the local police did most of the searching that night she went missing and the next day. And Todd's team wasn't brought in until 36 hours after the crash. And watching that, I was watching it with my dad. He got sucked into this documentary with me. And he was like, whoa, 36 hours. And I was like, yeah, but I could see where, like, her car's right there, like that, searching that night and the next day, like, you're thinking as a police officer, like, she couldn't have gotten that far, right? Like, we're probably going to find her. And then after 36 hours of not being able to find her, you're like, okay, well, now I need help.
Well, yeah, especially in the snow, right? Like she couldn't have gotten very far in the snow.
Yeah, and there was about 1.5 to 2 feet of snow when the search began.
Like, there were no footprints outside of her car either?
No. Well, I think like around her car maybe, but nothing that like went into the woods.
Do we think she got into like her boyfriend's car?
Well,
Is that a
not her
theory?
boyfriend's car, but maybe a car. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll talk about. So the temperature remained the same since the crash, and then when his team went in, there wasn't any more snow. So the area was basically the same as the night of the crash. And he had helicopters that came in, they scoped out the area, and they were equipped with infrared sensors so that if her body was giving off any heat at all, it would have detected her. And again, they didn't see any human footprints going from the roadway to the woods within a 10-mile radius that they couldn't account for.
That's weird.
Yeah. So by the end of that search, Todd said he did not believe that she left the roadway.
What?
They then brought out police doggos that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
And that was about 10 days after the crash. The doggos searched a half-mile radius all around the site of the crash, but they didn't find Maura or anything of hers. His team conducted 3 more searches, one with 7 different teams of dogs. They searched 12 miles of roadway up to 1 to 2 miles into the woods with the dogs, and places up to 50 miles away that they knew Maura liked to visit. So, like, maybe if she got there somehow, and they didn't find anything. So eventually the search was called off, and Todd believes that she did not go into the woods because there would have been some trace of her, right? Like
Yeah.
anything, including a body.
Like even after 10 days?
Yeah, so after 10 days, that's when the cadaver dogs came out. But I think like a day and a half after the search, they sent out a search and rescue dog. So not like a cadaver
Okay.
dog, because there was a cadaver dog or a search and rescue dog that came out, and he picked up her scent, and it abruptly ended in the middle of the road at an intersection. And he ran the same track twice. So the
Oh.
same exact thing twice he found. So like he followed her scent, and then it just disappeared in the middle of the road. So she would have to have gotten into a car, right? Like you don't just disappear from the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Some people believe that the dogs were brought in too late, or that if her body was frozen, it wouldn't smell. But they did do a test on this documentary where they took a cadaver dog and they buried a frozen placenta.
Gross.
And the dog was easily able to find that, even if it was frozen. Yeah. So because is literally no trace of her, they searched for her with infrared cams, they searched for her with cadaver dogs. This trail that this dog did find, abruptly vanishes in the middle of the road. The next theory is foul play.
Okay.
So one local theory of foul play is that 2 or 3 guys picked her up on their way to the ski resort. They probably took her to a party. She OD'd on drugs. They didn't know what to do, and then they didn't show up to work that night. But when doing interviews, that seems like more of an urban legend, and there isn't really much proof to it. So it's more of like people just talking, right?
Just making up some rumors for the sake of it.
Exactly. Yeah. But could it have been someone much more sinister?
I don't know.
Some people believe that a killer happened upon her, like just like, oh, here's this, what are the chances? But people argue like, what are the chances?
Well, there's all the lunatics living in those forests and parks.
There's what?
All the lunatics living in those national parks.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about the lunatics in the parks. I just heard that there's like really cool stuff that goes on in there and some weird shit, and that there's a lot of missing people in the national parks. So I don't know. I think it's wild, and I think you should do stuff on it because I'm interested.
Okay, I'll do some of that. That sounds interesting.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Well, do you remember, Jessica,
Ashley,
a few weeks back when I did the story on the serial killer Israel Keys?
That was like a bajillion years ago, but yes.
So he was a serial killer of opportunity, and
Yes.
he just picked up people who like happened upon him, and he was known to hunt in New Hampshire.
Oh.
So could she have been a victim of Israel Keys?
Oh.
Unfortunately, we'll never know, because if you remember from that episode, he killed himself in jail.
Yes. Coward.
I know. Other girls in this area have vanished, and it has taken a while to find their bodies. None as long as Maura's, but there's 2 specific girls that disappeared about 7 years apart, and they are thought to have been killed by the same person, but no one's ever been charged. So could there have been another serial killer in the area that happened upon Maura? There's also another case of 17-year-old Brianna Matland. She went missing about 5 weeks and 90 miles from where Maura went missing. Brianna had just gotten out of work, and she drove a few miles down the road where they found her vehicle, door open, and backed into an old farmhouse. And her paycheck was also sitting on her seat. And it was backed up hard enough to leave a hole in the house, so it was like a crash. So she crashed her car and disappeared.
Interesting.
Basically the same thing that happened to Maura. And they do say that Brianna was apparently involved in the drug scene, but her parents deny this. But that'll come to play, because there's another story about 2 brothers, one of whom lived about a mile from Maura's crash scene. And they think that Maura was taken to the house and murdered. One of the brothers is also rumored to be a part of the local drug scene, which would connect him to Brianna as well.
Okay.
So the second brother came forward and said, hey, I think my brother had something to do with Maura's case. He said he found a bloody knife in a glove compartment and of his brother's car. And oddly enough, he didn't send that to the police. He sent it to Fred, Maura's dad. And Fred submitted it twice to the police before they actually accepted it. So the first time they wouldn't accept it, he submitted it again and they finally accepted it. I'm
Why?
thinking probably something to do with chain of custody, right? So like they probably won't be able to use it in court because it was sent to Maura's dad first.
Okay.
And the brother also allowed our little PI that the family had working for them and Fred to go into the house that he assumed that Maura was murdered in with some dogs. And the dogs pointed to a closet where they found a stained carpet. They took those carpet samples and sent it to the police, but nothing ever came from it.
Oh.
But while there, the private investigator took wood chips from the closet because the closet had like a wood paneling in it. So he took some wood chips from the closet that seemed to have blood on them, and he kept them in his possession for all these years.
Wow.
When they tested it, it was human DNA from two individuals. One was male, but they couldn't determine what the other sample was because they couldn't pull the two samples apart because it was too like mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
So what they would need to do is get Maura's DNA to see if any of that matched to what they had. So they sent the wood chips in to the detective on the cold case, but he said it was so degraded. And again, there wasn't a chain of evidence that it could never be used in court and it couldn't be matched or not matched to Maura. It was just too degraded.
That's annoying.
Yeah. One of the last things that this documentary talked about, have you ever seen the show Medium?
No.
Oh, well, it's a show about Alison Dubois, and she's a medium that she's actually helped in a lot of police cases.
Okay.
The Arizona Police Department's has called her in before. Texas Rangers have called her in before, and so in the documentary, Maggie was like, we've got nothing. We've got nothing to lose. Let's call her in. So her process is to come into a crime scene not knowing anything about the crime. She only wants a name, a picture, and a birthday. She said that she felt that Maura was no longer alive, that she normally wouldn't get into a car with someone she didn't know. She said she kept seeing a car over and over, and that someone that Maura knows was a part of her disappearance. She said her friends seemed to be key. She said that some of them know key pieces of information, but they haven't shared it because they didn't think that piece of information was important. She said there are a few people who know what happened to Maura and that they may have helped cover it up. She said she also feels as if the murderer was unassuming, like if he smiled at you, you would trust him. She said that Maura knew him, but not well, and that he turned on her, that she did not willingly go with him. She said she gets kind of like a Ted Bundy vibe from him. Like you wouldn't think he would do anything like that because you wouldn't think he had to because he was so charming, and that Maura would not be his only victim.
Yeah.
She also believed that Maura stopped and met up with someone at a local bar or restaurant, which could account for that missing hour from when this journalist drove the same thing, and did it in an hour less than Maura did. And then she believed that that's where she met this guy. And she said, I'm getting a rapey vibe from him, but like it went too far.
Oh.
So like she thinks he's a rapist, but Maura fought back, went too far, and also she got the feeling that this guy knew some of the same people Maura knew, and maybe that's why she was a little bit more trusting of him.
Yeah.
And that he also was afraid that she would go back and tell those people. So that was another reason that like he killed her. She said she feels like the girlfriends of Maura know that some of the guys they hang out with are a little nefarious and that they may know who did this, like without actually knowing they know. She said she feels like he had friends that helped him get rid of whatever needed to get rid of. And it seems like there was 3 guys, 2 being brothers that followed up behind Maura, and one of them was in Maura's car. And remember that first police report said that there was a guy in her car smoking.
Mm-hmm.
She also said that a bridge was important and that she isn't much further than where the police were looking.
Oh.
She also said it was on a dead-end street where the locals go to drink or like get in trouble and stuff. And they searched a few of things that matched that, but none of them registered with Allison. But yeah, so there's still so many unanswered questions, and each theory has some things in it that have been debunked and some things that haven't been debunked. And this is just it's so crazy that someone can just vanish. But
Mm-hmm.
they did find at Loon Mountain Resort, on I believe it was September 8th of this year, they found small bone fragments, and that was about 20 miles or 30 minutes from where Maura's car was found.
Oh.
So the police have these in, and they're identifying them to see, if they're human, if they can determine sex or anything like that. But it said it can take anywhere from like a couple days to several months. So
I
once we get
hate
that
that.
update, I'll update you guys on this. But I know, but for now, it's still unsolved. And I feel for her family, because I can't imagine going through life where someone you love just disappears and you never know what happened to them.
Yeah, that would be awful.
Yeah, and at the very end of the documentary, the dad goes, "Don't worry, kid, we're gonna find you." And I almost broke down.
Oh, that's sad.
I know, so sad. But that's my story on Maura Murray.
I liked your story. Thank you for sharing. I've never heard of it,
Thanks.
so it
Yeah.
was interesting to hear about.
Tell me all about the Japanese cult.
All right. I'm going to apologize ahead of time that I don't know how to properly say any of this, and I tried finding pronunciations and I still couldn't do it properly. So I figured I would just wing it.
I have faith in you.
Thank you. All right, so this one's a short one, which is good because Ashley's was long.
Yeah, mine was pretty long.
I didn't write down any of my sources. I'm sorry. It was probably all that's interesting, to be completely honest.
That sounds about right.
So, so the Om Shinrikyo cult began as a group dedicated to meditation and spiritual advice, but it quickly evolved into an organization intent on hastening the end of the world. Hastening?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Hastening.
Okay.
Hastening.
To say
Hastening.
it. Whatever.
I was like, what's happening?
I thought the same thing afterwards. This Japanese group was in fact founded as a simple yoga class in 1984.
I love how it starts out from yoga and goes to like speeding up the end of the world.
Yeah. Right. The peace to the non-peace. Although yoga does make me mad, so
You know what? Same.
I hate yoga.
I actually really like it, but I do get mad at how not stretchy and out of shape I am.
Yes, I think I have a bad taste in my mouth because the only 2 yoga classes I've ever been to, the instructor kept pointing out me as what you don't do.
Oh no.
I'm
Awful.
like, okay, I guess I'm never doing this again.
That's awful.
Yeah. So it was not a pleasurable experience.
Yeah, I bet not.
But so only 11 years later, this group of supposed humble beginnings carried out a devastating sarin gas attack on a Tokyo subway. And then this group became the world's most frightening doomsday cults. And who was behind all of this? It was a man named uh, Shoko Asahara. And he came from very humble beginnings. I don't know.
Okay.
Shoko is his first name. Shoko.
Shoko. Shoko. I would think Shoko.
Yeah, okay. Asahara, whose real name is fuck off. Chizuo. Chitsuo.
Fuck off.
uh Chitsuo Matsumoto. Sure. And he was born into an impoverished tatami mat making family. Holy fuck. Okay. Um He was sent to a blind school after losing his sight, a lot of his sight, sorry, not all of his sight, but he lost most of his sight as a toddler due to infantile glaucoma, which I didn't even know was a thing, and it's just a fresh new thing to be afraid of.
That's so sad.
Yeah. He left his classmates with little pleasant. Oh my God, that was not English. He left his classmates with little. What the fuck? Um, he left his classmates with not a lot of nice things to say about him. Does that sound okay?
He left his classmates with not a lot of nice things. Yeah, I think that works.
Okay, when he graduated in 1977, because his peers remember him as a bully who wanted money and didn't care how he got it, which I'm sure is just some foreshadowing to how his life turned out.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah. He began selling herbal treatments after leaving school, but his earnings were insufficient to support his wife and increasing family. He ultimately got into some shady business dealings and was convicted of practicing pharmacology without a license in 1981. And that's when things began to take a weird kind of like supernatural turn. Like
Oh,
just very mystical and weird.
okay.
So, meditation and ancient religious nope.
Ancient religious what?
So, I'm gonna start it over. I was like 3 lines ahead. Meditation and ancient religious ideas piqued Asahara's curiosity. He combined Hindu, Buddhist, and Christian teachings with Nostradamus's prophecies and began to preach his ideas through yoga and meditation sessions.
Okay.
So, what began as a class in 1984 evolved into the group Om Shinrikyo in 1987, which was officially recognized as a religious organization in Japan 2 years later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that grew fast.
Yeah.
Asahara promised members health and a better life via spirituality, attention, and positive thinking in publications and regular appearances on talk shows. And that was a message that drew a growing following.
Okay.
As time passed, Asahara's claims became more assertive. He started referring to himself as the ultimate savior and Christ's lamb.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
This reminds me, I know we did this, but you did another cult where the guy considered himself like the savior and God's like chosen one or whatever. And I said the same thing. Of course he did. Like
Yeah.
deja vu for all these cult leaders.
Yes. That is very similar to how a lot of them kind of function, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's something that a lot of people are in tune with, I find, especially like the religious side of things. So it's very easy to kind of
claim that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I feel like there's like a how to start a cult 101 that all these people are reading.
Yeah, probably. Oh my goodness. So while sharing his spiritual power and wisdom with his followers, Asahara offered salvation and he vowed to take on the world's sins.
Oh, that's a lot of sins.
Yeah. His lofty vision, however, was tinged with more sinister messages. He advised young people to avoid their parents because they were part of the present and not the future.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was a clever technique to keep young followers away from more sensible advice, and it succeeded.
Oh gosh.
By capitalizing on the anti parent discourse, members formed deep relationships with one another and lost contact with their families. This reminds me of Jonestown almost.
Yeah. Again, how to start a cult 101.
Yeah. His teachings also gained a surprising following among young academics and college students who saw the cult's ideas as progressive and a welcome relief after years of high pressure academic competition.
Yeah, the Japanese are pretty hardcore with that. I mean, as are a lot of other countries other than.
Yes.
Yeah.
They persisted, determined to fit in, even as the group's emphasis on physical endurance and punishment began to wear on them.
Oh.
So, members participated in Madness Camp, which was a 10-day summit designed to put their strength to the test.
Oh, this sounds like it's not going to be good.
No. Although these aspects of cult life were cloaked in secrecy, several cult escapees claim to have undergone shock therapy and taken hallucinogenic drugs. Rumors started to spread, so the anti-cult lawyer who had been causing Om Shinrikyo problems abruptly vanished with his family, never to be seen again.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And I have no idea what happened to him. I don't think anybody really knows.
Yeah.
People who wanted to leave the group were being detained against their will and made to sign over large sums of money. And that was just some of the rumors that were going around.
Oh my gosh.
Others were killed after announcing their intention to leave the group.
Jeez.
Yeah, very intense.
Yeah.
Started off as yoga.
Yeah, and now you're killed if you want to leave.
Yeah, it's insane.
But you know, that might make me work out more.
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
gonna get murdered if I leave the class.
Yeah, for sure. Let me just get in tune with my yoga skills.
Yeah.
Om Shinrikyo, on the other hand, continued to develop, and by the early 1990s, the organization had collected a membership around 10,000 in
Oh my
Japan
gosh.
and several thousand worldwide, particularly in Russia.
Oh my god. That's way more than I thought it would be.
I know. Isn't that wild?
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I never even heard of them,
I haven't either.
but apparently they're pretty deadly. So,
Yeah.
the most lethal component of Asahar's thinking was his belief that the apocalypse was on the horizon. Only Om Shinrikyo initiates would escape the end of the world, according to Asahara. And in order to accelerate a future where only the devoted inhabited the earth, they wanted to bring it about themselves. This cult attempted to create a foothold in Japanese politics in the hopes of wielding political power, but when numerous elections failed to yield the intended results, they abandoned this plan. Om Shinrikyo was officially labeled a cult by Japanese authorities at this time. In response, the cult began to stockpile weaponry, especially from Russia,
Oh.
and engaged in an illegal drugs trade in order to supplement its membership donations. The money was sent to a plant that the cult said was used to print the group's literature, but in reality, the facility produced the Nazi-era nerve gas known as sarin.
Oh gosh.
So I got some information from the CDC on what sarin gas is.
Mm-hmm.
So the appearance is clear, colorless liquid. The description is sarin, military designation GB, is a nerve agent that is one of the most toxic of the known chemical warfare agents.
Wow.
It is generally odorless and tasteless. Exposure to sarin can cause death in minutes.
Oh, wow.
A fraction of an ounce of sarin on the skin can be fatal.
Wow.
Isn't that insane?
That is.
Nerve agents are chemically similar to organophosphate pesticides and exert their effects by interfering with the normal function of the nervous system. So, methods of dissemination. So, indoor air. Sarin can be released into indoor air as a liquid spray or as a vapor. Water. Sarin can contaminate water. It can contaminate food. It can also be released into the outdoor air as a liquid spray again.
Oh, gosh.
And then for agricultural, if sarin is released into the air as a liquid spray, it has the potential to contaminate agricultural products. If sarin is released as a vapor, it is highly unlikely to contaminate agricultural products.
Okay.
And then sarin can be absorbed into the body by inhalation, ingestion, skin contact, or eye contact. Ingestion is an uncommon route of exposure.
Oh, okay.
So that's what we know on sarin gas. It's insane.
Yeah.
And they were producing it, which is just crazy to me.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. So this wasn't the group's first foray into poisoning the metropolis. They sprayed anthrax infected fluids from the roof of their Tokyo building in 1993. Residents complained of a strong odor, but no one contracted anthrax or was affected in any way. So they struck again the following year, undeterred.
Oh, God.
Following the success of their initial sarin gas experiments, they concentrated their efforts on a neighborhood where several judges who were expected to rule against the cult in a land dispute lived.
Oh.
The cult was never suspected, despite the fact that 8 people died and 500 people were injured.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
How many people did you say died?
8.
Wow.
8 people died, 500 injured. Several more residents who were inconveniencing Om Shinrikyo died of strange ailments, but Asahara and his supporters eluded investigation since no one realized the group was creating deadly poisons.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely wouldn't think that was a thing happening.
Yeah, like with a yoga group.
Yeah.
So that is until March 20th, 1995, when members of the organization boarded a Tokyo subway train during rush hour while concealing bags of sarin gas.
Oh, no.
The cult members walked off the train after puncturing the bags with the tips of their umbrellas. And from this attack, 13 people died and 5,500 were injured inside the subway.
Oh, my gosh. It's a smaller number of deaths than I thought it was going to be, so that's good, but still, oh, my
Yeah.
gosh.
But many of the injured people are still dealing with the consequences of this attack today.
Oh,
So long-term effects, which is very unfortunate.
yeah.
The police finally turned their attention to the cult, and the group's compounds were raided in the days following this incident. Police discovered enough biological weapons to kill millions of people, as well as plans to attack other mass transit networks, including the subway system in New York.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, did they really think that they were going to get away with something like that? Like they were going to be able to do the one in Tokyo and just like, okay, who's next?
Well, I mean, they had gone so long without being detected, right? So,
That's true. That's true.
yeah. I mean, they got away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And the raids didn't put a stop to the cult's activities.
What?
Yeah, so several other nearly lethal attacks on commuters were thwarted just in time, but they still tried.
Oh my gosh.
Authorities apprehended Asahara on May 16th, Asahara would spend years unsuccessfully appealing a death sentence handed out by a judge. On July 6th, 2018, himself and 6 other cult members were eventually executed.
Wow, that was recently.
Yeah. Yeah, 2018. Yep.
Yeah.
That was very recently. Yep.
Yeah.
That's crazy. La, la, la. Former Shinrikyo members have come out about their experiences and authored books on life inside the cult in the years since the Tokyo attack. Asahara dealt ruthlessly with disobedience, torturing and occasionally executing anyone who did not follow the party line. Kidnapping was frequently used by the cult to sway its followers. Those who attempted to leave the gang were subjected to torture or execution. Despite public criticism, internal strife, and government crackdowns, the group continues to exist.
No, that's what I was going to ask you when you were done, if they're still around.
Yes, but they are under a different name. They are now called Aleph, Aleph, and they changed their name in 2000. In 2006, Aleph fragmented even more, giving birth to Hikari no Wa, or Ring of Light, and it is another Shinrikyo offshoot.
Oh, gosh.
Aleph and Hikari no Wa, for some reason, still have members today. Many of them are in the Eastern Europe and Russia areas, where former adherents of Shinrikyo have joined the new movements. And though Asahara is no longer alive, his philosophy goes on, and the world maintains a watchful eye on his followers.
Wow. So do they still believe like that they need to bring upon the end of the world?
I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know.
That's crazy.
But that's my story on that cult. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I hope nobody from that cult hears the story and comes after us, Jessica.
I know, I'm always so scared. Do you have a joke for me?
I don't. Hold on.
Ashley.
Let me get a joke. Hold on. All right, here's a good one. You ready?
I'm ready. Lay it on me.
I'm afraid for the calendar. Its days are numbered.
I've told you this one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, hold on.
Okay, give me a different one.
My wife said I should do lunges to stay in shape. That would be a big step forward.
Yeah, I've read that one. I don't know if I said that one too, but
I wonder if this is the same site you went to. I thought that I had heard that from my dad jokes guy on TikTok. I forgot I had heard it from you. Let's see. Oh, here's one since it's getting into pumpkin season. How do you fix a broken pumpkin?
I don't know.
With a pumpkin patch.
That's funny.
Well, if you liked that and you want more of us lovely ladies, you can find us on historiesandmysteries.ca. We are also on TikTok at Histories and Mysteries Pod and Facebook and Instagram.
And if you want to rate and review us, that would be greatly appreciated. You can do that on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. It would be super duper appreciated. It really helps us get out there.
Yes, please. Well, thank you for listening, everyone, and we look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week.
Bye.